Hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. I'm your host, Rich Owens, and from the bottom of my heart, we've missed you. We didn't record an episode last week. It's been a whole 2 weeks since we last got to speak to you. I've missed you. I hope you're well. I hope you've had a wonderful fortnight. I, of course, am joined by two of the most handsome people I know. It's the FM team. It's the United City FM. It's Jebaroo. Kev, you beautiful, beautiful sweetheart. How are you, pal?
Hello, my friend. I'm doing really well, thank you. It was quite considerably my fault that we didn't record last week in a lot of ways. My missus had COVID, unfortunately, for 2 weeks, and then very, very generously decided to give me the leftovers. So I had COVID light, as I called it. Never tested positive for it myself, but I felt rough and I had sore throat and my voice went for a while a couple of weeks ago and leading into last weekend's record. So I wasn't at my best. I've still got a slight weakness in the voice, if I'm totally honest, but I think it's doing me all right. It makes me sound a bit gravelly occasionally, which, can't be a bad thing really, but I'm good. I'm happy to be here. We absolutely did miss doing this last week. I'm really happy to be back.
It's lovely to have you back, and I'm glad to hear you're feeling better and a little bit of gravel in the voice. I think there is definitely a gap in the market for the Barry White of the FM community. So in you step, it's United City FM ASMR. That's the direction of the podcast. That's what we're taking it in now. Kev's just going to whisper Trequartista every 10 minutes, and it's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait. And speaking of phenomenal, Jebaroo, how you doing, bud?
Trequartista. Right. Anyway, yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. I was going to say it wasn't completely your fault on that one, Kev. I was away doing the Pool World Championships for Channel 4. How exciting. Yeah, but they decided to do an early start. No, I wasn't playing, unfortunately, yeah, but they decided to do an early start on the Saturday morning. They told us this on the Friday night, which kind of just scuppered any plans I had for Saturday morning in any shape or form. But yeah, it was reasonably exciting. Some guy called Clint from Nottingham won 15 grand, so there you go. But 6 days of pool gets a little tedious and boring, so I was quite happy to return to the FM space in a way today. I've got my favourite new person to watch, Pokes FM, on in the background. He was unbelievable in Path to the Playoffs this week, so definitely a shout out for him. And it was an exciting Path to the Playoffs this week as well to cover.
It absolutely was, and we're gonna touch on that later. But it's a pleasure to have you both back. Jeb, one question I have for you, knowing what you had to go and do, were you working in the capacity you work in, kind of behind the scenes of the playoffs, doing all the technical side of things, or were you the guy that just had to go and keep putting 50p on the table in between each game so they could carry on the pool competition?
Luckily, somebody had broke the table, so they could just continue playing. No, like when you see where the coin thing's just like ripped out, they almost had that on the table. Obviously, it was a professional table. There's nothing along those lines, and the guys at the IPA pool. It was mainly my side of things was production manager, which is basically sit there, make sure everyone's fed and watered, and then if I need to take over anywhere, I did. Which I ended up vision mixing 2 sets of the grand final, which I never expected to be doing, but it was as simple as pressing buttons on a stream deck. Just cut the cameras at the appropriate times. Some of the earlier rounds had less professional players in, so you had to cut the cameras quite quickly because you got a bit of builder's arse. To put it nicely. Wow. Quick, get that one off. Yeah, exactly. Just before you come back to the table, put a belt on, thanks.
You knew the risks when you took the gig. You knew what was going to happen. Hey, it's lovely to have you both back. It's been a really, really busy fortnight, I think, for the three of us in terms of content, in terms of streaming. We always like to start the podcast with a little bit of a catch-up of what one of us has been up to in terms of our saves online. This week, it's Builder's arse hiding magician, Jeb. How are the fish? How was Italy?
Well, I think last time we left off, we're basically approaching the end of season 3, so our second season in Serie B, and it just gone disastrously. We started really well again and then just fell off a cliff. I think we were 9th when we left and we weren't hoping of getting anywhere. I think I went into a stream immediately after we recorded. We got 4 wins in a row. Van Hooijdonk and Totti, not the ones from the 98-99 database, the Suns on the Pescara side of things. They just couldn't stop scoring. They were scoring hat tricks between them both. They were providing each other goals. It was great. Ended up finishing 5th. So we go into the playoffs of the Serie B, which has a preliminary round, which we absolutely bossed and went through 3-0, and we got to the semi-final. We played Monza, and we went 3-0 up in that one, so it was all cruising nicely. Then they got a player sent off, and it was all going lovely, and then 60 minutes hit, and we got FM'd, ended up finishing 3-3. Defence just fell apart. No clue why, it's just that standard way. Very frustrating. We got a defensive midfielder called Vukotic, who's regularly capped by Montenegro, really, really good, but he kept on popping up with goals and headers and stuff like that. He got 2 in the semi-final, got to the second leg, won that 1-0, just played it out, no highlights, 1 highlight, done. We got to the final, we play Verona, who finished second, I do believe, which will come into the story later. And we win the away leg 1-0, nice and comfortable. Van Hooijdonk gets up there, a header, scores, and we go into the second leg, and we, to be fair, we don't change anything, and there's no highlights. There's 0 highlights all game. I'm like, it's fine, quite happy with this. We should be fine anyway. If there is a highlight, we've got extra time, we've got penalties to play off and all things like that. The 93rd minute, Vukotic, who had just been chatting about, tripped over one of Verona's forwards in the box in the 93rd minute. First highlight of the entire game. Trips him over, penalty. They scored the penalty. I was like, okay, extra time penalties, let's go. And then the game finishes, and there's no team talk page, there's no substitutions. I was like, what's going on here? That's it. We're out. Verona finished second. They go through as a higher seed because it was a draw over the 2 legs. That's how Serie B works. I mean, we had people complaining in the playoffs about the 3-way tie on head-to-head. Sorry, I'm complaining about having we drew and we went out. I mean, that's how it ended. So I don't know. I had to pick myself up. We lost a couple of players over the summer. Vukotic went to Sampdoria for just over $1 million. There was a couple of players that moved on and stuff like that. We picked up some nice free transfers, though. We picked up Amad Diallo, who's at Sunderland now, also of Man United on loan. We picked him up for free, which was unexpected. So we got a nice winger there to replace some of the loans that we had from Roma. We spent $2 million on 4 18-year-olds combined, an Irish striker, an Italian midfielder, another Italian central defender, I think a defensive midfielder, and they're all going to be blooded for this new season coming up. We picked up an Irish centre-back, Liam Scales, who was at Celtic on a free. He's quite good to go alongside Finnish, still the best Finnish name I've ever heard in my life, of Daryl O'Shaughnessy. Yeah, very Finnish. Such a Finnish name. So we picked him. And like I said, that will make us quite comfortable. We just basically bolstered the squad, got it going, and we're going to push again for this year. And then we got to transfer deadline day. We had a bit of money left, and last second season in, we had Zlatan, who had a nice little season. We had Aubameyang the season before. He's retired now, and Sakho's moved on to New York as well. Rich, I've signed Dimitri Payet. He's 38 years old. He's still got all of those techniques. He's got no physicals, but he's got all those technical stats. So yeah, that will where my next update will be, how Dimitri Payet gets on, and how we'll probably fall out with him. We'll see how he goes. I'm sure he's going to rile up the fans in some shape or form.
Oh, you are going to have an absolutely roller coaster of emotions. It's just the Dimitri Payet experience in a nutshell. I'm a fan of him in PvP competitions. I used him a lot, especially towards the tail end of FM22. He will score goals for you. He will upset everybody, and then he will just stop trying. And then he'll have a big sulk, but probably all in the same game. Probably that's just the first half. So you've got that to look forward to. I saw the tweet. You tweeted out, I saw the Dimmy Payet picture, and I was quite happy, if I'm honest with you. I was quite happy about that. Commiserations, by the way, on that absolute nonsense rule they've got in those playoffs. It's horrible, isn't it? It's absolutely horrible. It makes no sense. I was exactly the same as you. It happened to be in Mexico with my old stream save. I got San Luis into the knockout part of the competition, and we came back from 3-1 down against Monterrey. Won the second leg 2-0 with a 93rd minute equaliser. I was bearing in mind I'm offline. I'm up out my seat. I'm absolutely raving. And then the full time whistle goes, and exactly like you, they're like, "Oh no, you're out because Monterrey are just a better team than you. Sorry, you tried, but no, you're just not as important as them. So if you could just leave the competition now, we would appreciate it." And it's so demoralising. I Cannot
Yeah,
stand
when you
it.
put it that way, it kind of makes sense that they've been the best team of you over 38 games. But when you're in that situation, it makes no sense, and it's not fair, and it's completely not
Exactly.
fair, and it's still not fair.
Totally.
Yes, Jeb has written a very sternly worded letter to the Italian Footballing Authority.
Apparently, they've got bigger things to deal with, so yeah. Something to do with corruption, I don't know.
Can't imagine.
Can't imagine. Couldn't possibly imagine. Well, I am up the fish. I cannot wait to. We'll check back in like a few weeks and see how you're getting on. See how things are going with Dimi Payet in the team. I can only imagine. Well, it's going to be brilliant or it's going to be terrible. There's going to be no middle ground. I cannot wait. Very excited to hear back about that. That's going to be lovely. Also, as well as playing the computer, as well as playing the computer in offline saves or streaming saves, as we all like to do, we all got together a couple of weeks ago. We all got together. We had the very first ever, the inaugural FMT versus the community draft, and what a wonderful night was had by all. We had the three of us. We had AJ NRK came to play with us. We had Gavin Brash came to play with us. Alistair came to play with us. Who else came to play with us?
Dave
Gudger, of course, the Gudge. Of course, Dave Gudger came to play as well. We did some drafting in a beautifully set up and run competition, impeccably set up and run competition. Kev, how did you find the whole experience? Because some of us had a really nice time.
Well, my experience was mixed, let's say, and we'll deal with the positive first. And the positive is we have said for a very long time here, when we draft, basically the biggest pro to drafting is the fact that we get to mix with other people and we get to chat with other people about FM, about, whilst we're playing. And this evening was brilliant because it was literally like 7 of us in a call all evening long. We didn't split off to do our games. We just sat there and chatted with everybody as to what was happening at every given time. It was just brilliant to get to know a few people, get to have that opportunity. So that was the really good positive. For me, the slight negative, I still can't quite figure out drafting in FM23 in the sense that the first 3 games I showed up on and my team just went, what are we doing? What's that round thing that moves about and they're putting it in our thingy at the end there? They just couldn't do a thing. It was just awful. And of course, the minute you're down like 2 or 3 games and everybody else is winning and getting points on the table and go, this is great. And, Alistair's got Hulk scoring 74 goals for him in 3 games or whatever it was. And it was always on the back foot for me. So the second half was a bit better. I tweaked a few things. It's helped me understand my tactic a bit more. And I've made some changes to what I want to play in the next opportunity I get to draft. It was a brilliant evening. Loved it. I just wish I could figure out how to draft.
Yeah, there is that. That can be one of the downsides to drafting. If you can't quite figure out how to make the players do the right things on the pitch, it can get a little bit frustrating. Just look at me and my actual competitive PvP performances. Jeb, how did you find the evening?
It was mixed for me. I mean, we started well. We got a draw against Alistair. Played Gavin Brash. We beat him. We always beat Gavin Brash. I don't know.
You do.
I've got that hex over in this season. I think 4 competitive matches we played, and I've beat him every time. Congratulations! He actually won a competitive draft recently. But like I said, I think it was mixed. I can't remember my squad in any shape or form, but it went down to the final day, didn't it, Rich? It went down to the final day. Me versus you. Alistair could have capitalised if we drew. We didn't draw, did we? I was winning quite handsomely until about the 80th minute. And then what happened, Rich?
And then Jeb's defense took some notes from Kev's and just forgot how to defend. They just stopped. My curse of just rotten striker picks in FM drafts continued. I was absolutely convinced I was going to get the most out of my forward line, and it didn't work. And then I remembered my last pick of the draft was Enner Valencia, former West Ham United legend. Enner Valencia, who was just sat, couldn't even make it onto the bench. I was like, you know what? Let's give Enner Valencia some starts. And then he just scored loads of goals, including one absolute stinker where he was mistackled twice, picked up a rebound and scored an equaliser in about the 83rd minute past Jeb. And then Chelsea's £85 million man, Mudryk, just decided to seal the win in the 94th minute, just picked up the ball and ran a really, really long way and scored. So that goal, as it turned out, won me the whole competition. Hooray! They say it's bad form to win your own drafts in FM. I think they are lying. Although really, really frustratingly, it's not a ranked competition. So eventually meaningless. But I had a wonderful time. As Kev said, it's FMT versus the community, and we had the best time with the community. As I say, it was a 3.5 hour call with friends playing FM, which was an absolute joy. So thank you to everyone that took part. Thank you to everyone that came and hung out in our chats, because some of us were streaming. It was lovely to see you all. But most importantly, I think FMT won. So community, step in line, please. Remember who the daddies around here are. It's us, not you. But also
first, second, and I can't remember. Where do you finish, Kevin?
In there somewhere.
Oh, okay,
first, second, and also took part. So
Yes.
I didn't finish bottom in the end.
No.
Which is something. So, remember your standings, community, but also thank you for supporting the podcast. We love you. We really appreciate you. You're good people. We're going to do another one, by the way. We're going to do another FMT versus the community. We will get a confirmed date very soon. It's probably going to be a Sunday evening again. But we'll check our socials. We'll get a confirmed date. And I think it's fair to kind of announce this now. The next FMT versus the community is going to be the wonderful new 1998-1999 database from the Mad Scientist. I spent the night streaming it last night. I have not had that much fun streaming Football Manager in a very long time. It's an absolute delight. If you've not already downloaded it, download it, and then just don't even play a save. Just sit there and scroll through every single player in every single team, because you're going to just go on a big, beautiful, nostalgic walk down memory lane. It's stunning. I adore it, and we're going to draft with it. So come hang out with us if you're interested in playing. Let us know. Wonderful. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the normal stuff that we do at this stage. Now, regular listeners will know at this stage of the podcast, we go through our bits and pieces, and then there's always a topic. There's always something that we like to talk about. This week, we've done a change. We've done a little change. We've decided to treat ourselves. We've got a guest. We've got a guest. He's here. For the audio listeners, Kev has just got out a little llama. This week's podcast, if you haven't noticed, is called. Sorry, Jeb's done it. Jeb's done it for the audio listeners. This is confusing. Jeb's got a llama out. The episode is called "3 Men and a Little Llama." Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first ever guest. Imagine if it's not llama now. Imagine if I was like, it's Dr. Benji. That would be so weird. It's FM Llama. Hey. Llama, how's it going, friend?
Well, that was quite the introduction, wasn't it? I mean, to be branded a little treat was good enough, but then to be the little llama to your 3 men is slightly demeaning, I would say. But I'll run with it because it's not the worst intro I've had this week.
Fair.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the worst, but also I really think we can't lean that heavily on the therapy part of Football Manager therapy this early into the record. So mate, thank you so much for coming on, Llama. It's lovely to have you here.
It's all right. When I heard how much you pay guests on this podcast, I couldn't really say no, could I?
Absolutely. The payment, by the way, is the antidote. So we'll get that to you within the next 48 hours and you'll be fine. We promise. I've got to say, we put a tweet out earlier this week. We started talking about getting guests onto the podcast and we put it out to the community. We said, who would you like to see us sit down and talk to? And Llama's name popped up on more than one occasion. So it just made sense to get you in, sit you down and have a chat.
Well, I have several spoof accounts, you see. So
smart thinking.
Yeah, I've got to say, FM_Llama1 was desperate to see you. FM_Llama3 really wanted somebody else. So you played it superbly. I've got to say, you timed it beautifully. How are you this morning, mate? As we before we recorded, we had a little chat. You've been, as you said, at the Lion's Den in the away end of a pretty fierce football fixture this morning.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what my weekends comprise now: an under 11s away game in wildest Northamptonshire. I wasn't competing, by the way. I don't still squeeze into under 11s football. I would be top scorer in that league I'd be average in that league if I was still there.
Yeah, we all like to think that, you know what, if most of us in the community actually had the physical energy to tie a pair of football boots, we could do some damage in the kids' leagues. But no, absolutely couldn't. I work in a school and I just see children jogging and I get tired. So I'm like, actually, no, it's not for me anymore. I can't possibly deal with it. I cannot possibly deal with it. It's far too much. But anyway, Llama, thank you for joining us, mate. We're looking forward to having you here because you are a man who has pretty
I am
much
a man.
You are a man. I've heard rumors. You're a man who
go more in depth than this, or are we just kind of?
No, that's it. Yeah.
No, this is
podcast.
My base.
Llama, thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure. See you next week, everybody. Bye bye. You're a guy you've done a lot in terms of the broader spectrum of FM and the things that you can do within it. You've done loads. You've streamed. You've recorded videos. You've pundited. You do all these things very, very well. By the way, where does your kind of FM journey start? I suppose if we're going to do this, it chronologically seems to make the most sense. You are a man of, you're like Jeb and I. We think you're at least 24. So you can't have been playing the game for that long. A vintage. Where does your kind of FM journey start then? What's the
So, contrary to popular belief, not with CM1, actually. I missed that. I was late to the party. I think is it Championship Manager 92-93, where they have that kind of Ron Atkinson-esque manager in the sheepskin coat, jabbing a finger, Kev, that's it, at the camera. I was bought that on, what do we used to call computers back in the old days? Did it have like a 386 or something? Or I first played the game on my cousin's Amiga. And then we got the PC version. And me and my brother, who's 5 years younger than I, sort of loaded up again, dead excited because we'd played it on the Amiga at our cousin's house, had so much fun. We booted up on the old 386. We play our first game, and then we thought the game that we'd purchased crashed every time. So we reloaded it, started a new game, did all the preseason stuff, played our first fixture. And it crashed again. And little did we know, we just had the worst computer known to man. And it hadn't crashed. It just took 50 minutes between fixtures to process. One time we just went out and played football and thought, this game's rubbish. Came back. It was ready for the next game week.
Amazing. I mean, we've all had that experience of, just slow computer. Say we all have. Me, hello, it's me, the man who until recently had the worst setup in the FM community. We've all been there where it drags on and takes a while. I mean, Kev, are you kind of similar kind of experience in terms of your first experiences with the game?
So what I can remember of my early days in Championship Manager is not that it took 50 minutes to go between matches, but it literally took me an hour to actually create a saved game in the first instance on one of my computers. And there were times where you go in there, and this is typical of every Football Manager player on the planet, I reckon. You go in there, you set up your game, and like 6 weeks in, you go, not feeling it. Something's, and so I had to go out and create another saved game, which took me another hour to load up, to then go in for 6 weeks and go, this isn't the one either. And eventually I'd find one and it would last me a little while. But that first instance of loading these things up on the old machines was just dreadful. But yeah, right the way back I was at, I'm sure it was Championship Manager 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly which, but way back there, definitely.
What I would say though, Rich, I don't know whether, I'm hoping somebody on your panel will remember this, but for me, that kind of lengthy pause between game time is actually a step up, because before playing Football Manager games on computer, I used to actually play them via mail order back in the early 90s. I don't know whether anybody else remembers that, but you find like a little advert in the back of Shoot or Match magazine, and you'd write off, pay them some kind of extortionate fee, like £2 a week. And through the post, they would send you A4 bits of paper.
Yeah, you have to tape the pound coins to get that.
That's it.
They sent you like a little pack and a little thing where you tape the pound coins to. I remember that quite well. Yeah, and it's. I think I got Preston in one league. I did, even though I lived 20 minutes away from Preston. I didn't know any of those players in those days and that type of thing. But yeah, I remember signing Phil Charnock, and that was about the only thing I can remember. But that's probably where I was with that.
But that had a very Football Manager feel to it, and that's I guess that's where it all started.
And then was that pretty much you? I mean, how long after the first experiences? Because I think most people you talk to about their experiences with FM is there's early experiences. I was exactly the same as yourself. I was, I think it was Championship Manager 3, cousin's computer, played it very, very occasionally. I was like, oh, this is okay. And then it's a little bit further down the line. It's kind of those Champ Mano 102s, and it's moving forwards from there. That's when the kind of the addiction really, really, really starts to kick in. Were you hooked early doors, or was it just more of a slow burner for you?
No, pretty much from that. So I played other kind of management simulation games. There was one on I think it was on the Commodore 64 called Manchester United in Europe that I started with.
I had that.
As soon as Football Manager arrived in my life, that was it. And I made the decision kind of at the age of about 12 or 13 to sacrifice life prospects and education just to pursue a Football Manager career. I decided to pass on both my GCSEs, A-levels and degree in order just to manage various teams around European football.
A man of culture, and I can respect it. I think there's not a single person who's listening to this that's going, what a terrible life choice he's made there. I was like, no, it's the right thing to do.
One man's culture is another man's lack of ambition, I think.
Exactly. My brother was the same. He was at university doing very, very well, and then just developed a really, really, passionate parasocial relationship with Anton van den Boer at Fiorentina, and that was it for him. That was game over. We've all been there.
Well, for me, it was Peter Aforikwe at Chester City, and the Chester City fans have never seen a season like it.
And they never will again. They never will again. They've dreamt of it. So that was actually it's a good point. Are you because in real life, in the real football, you're a Birmingham fan? Am I right in saying, Llama?
Fan might be putting it strongly, considering my emotions towards the club currently. I have been a long-term follower, but to be a fan of them in their current guise is difficult because of the ownership of the club. Fan, yes. Supporter, certainly financially, I try not to be.
Sure. Are you like myself in as much as because we've talked about kind of managers saves that we'll pick up, especially if you've been playing the game for a period of time. I won't do Sheffield Wednesday saves when I play Football Manager. Generally speaking, I used to a long time ago, but these days I won't do it. Very much like yourself. Lapsed fan, shall we say, not necessarily supporter there of the club at the moment, due to just ongoing reasons on and off the field. Have you ever are you kind of a Birmingham City guy when it comes to Football Manager? Do you like to right the wrongs virtually, or are you like me as I actually know what I don't want to be that miserable in real life and on a game?
So this is probably a good opportunity to explain this, isn't it? So in Football Manager circles, I'm known as Llama. And many people think, oh, that's because he has some kind of sort of whimsical affection towards the camelid. And it's not that at all. So back in the olden days on the Sports Interactive message boards, Llama stood for a lower league manager, an LLM with a little a llama. And so whenever I play Football Manager, I play as what they used to call a llama back in the days, which means you start in the lower leagues. You don't use the search function, the player search function. You don't use the staff search function. You try and play the game as realistically as possible. You start out with no badges, no qualifications, and you always start out some real dirty sort of Estonian tier 9 club. So Birmingham are doing their best in real life to sink to a level where I might start a game with them. But as yet, they've been thwarted in those efforts.
I love it. It's that lower league grind that a lot of, and again, you're in the right company. It's the right people. It's those lower league grinds. It's not necessarily strapping in and playing, loading up a Man City save or going back to the older reps, loading up a United save, for example. I mean, Jeb, you yourself, you're not much of a Liverpool guy on stream. Have you got any kind of favorite kind of lower league saves that you've touched on back in the day? Any llamas? Because that's my new favorite. That's my new favorite acronym.
I did a Liverpool save. I think it must have been like FM19. I think I streamed it or something along those lines. And I did one season. I signed Salomon Rondon for Liverpool, and I think that was the only signing I made to the squad. And we won everything in the first season. I went, I don't need to do this, that type of thing. I think I did one. So I had one. So I used to work for Game, who were owned by Sports Direct. So I thought, I'm going to go in and go do Newcastle save. Mike Ashley sacked me after 3 months. So I dropped down and I took over Peterborough. And they sacked me because, I can't remember why they sacked me. Oh, because I think I refused to sell a player. They sacked me after 3 months. So I ended dropping down all the way to the Vanarama North, and Chester came up. So I took over Chester, got them promoted. And then the Morecambe job came up from there, and that's where I'm from originally. So took over Morecambe, took them up to League One on no budget whatsoever. Then they halved the budget when I got into League One, and to be fair, I was about third. And Northampton came in for me, and then I continued on with Northampton from there. And it was the Northampton side of things, lots of new gens coming through. It was quite nice to see, and I still remember winning the FA Cup, and in that FA Cup run, I'd signed Luis Suarez. But signed him too late to register him for the league. So he didn't play in the league. He played exclusively in the FA Cup. He was 38 years old, and he scored the winner in the final against Everton. It was just beautiful, like just taking Northampton from up there. And it was like Morecambe, I think I left them in third, and Joey Barton took over after me. And he genuinely lost every game for the rest of the season, and they got relegated. And it was just like, it's almost perfect to see someone like Joey Barton just fail that way. But I think the one thing that I had, and I put this on stream the other day, I usually have something on in the background on this screen, and I found Championship Manager on the Commodore 64, the 8-bit version of it. So I put that in the background. It was really nice to see. One of the biggest continuations is spacebar to continue on everything. It's still the same. Like, it's not often that many people probably press it on Football Manager nowadays, but spacebar continues everything all the time. And the one thing I always remember from Championship Manager 2 is Clive Tildesley, long ball, looking for the flick on, just those awful commentary bits that were on there. But I'd love to hear them again as well. I don't know about you, Llama.
I miss that. I do actually miss some of the features that were in the older games. You know, like you used to be able to drag an arrow from your wide players for how far you'd like them to run. And you used to be able to click on with ball and without ball instructions and move them around. I quite like that.
Well, I went into Rich's stream last night as we were recording, and he was doing the 98-99 database, and I said in his stream, it just doesn't feel right unless you're just looking at the commentary, Rich. It just, what's going on? All these modern footballers running around a pitch.
Yeah, it feels really, really strange, doesn't it? You just want to turn it all off completely. Just turn off 2D or just turn off the monitor and just have my face in the corner. And I'll just do the commentary. It's like, oh, Ronaldo scored. Ronaldo scored again. Ronaldo scored again. Oh, now Baggio has scored. Yeah, and just do that for the whole time, because that feels like the authentic FM experience. It's those little sound clips, though. So, as I say, bring back the yellow arrows and bring back sound clips. I think those would be two welcome additions to the next installment of FM. My friend John has recently purchased an old copy of LMA Manager, and he has just been recording all of the little audio clips that the managers play when you change tactics. So at least twice a day, I get a 1-second audio clip of a man just shouting, "Knock it long!" And if I don't get them, I almost feel like my day's not complete now. So bring those back. Bring those back, please. They are wonderful. We deserve more of them. Llama, in terms of your, as I say, you're a lifer when it comes to the Champ Manager series. When it comes to FM, you're one of us. You are a man of the people, as I say, a man of impeccable culture and taste. In terms of, I mean, it's fast forwarding, I suppose, a little bit. In terms of your kind of content creation journey based around Football Manager, what were the what was the catalyst for you saying at this point, I rather than just as somebody who enjoys the game, what's the catalyst for you thinking I would like to now get in front of a camera and start producing content of my own based around this series? What was the thought process there?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. There certainly wasn't a day where I woke up and thought, you know what, I've had a dream. It certainly wasn't like that. I'd actually been YouTubing for about 3 years before I did any Football Manager content. I had like an educational channel, still do. So, I was already familiar with YouTube. And then, like many people, global pandemics plunged me into a situation where I was at home a lot more. And I thought, do you know what? Let's give it a go. Let's just see what it's like. So I started, and, it went okay, and it's just kind of continued from there. I'll be brutally honest with you, it's not easy, as the three of you will know, and there's probably been a good half dozen times where I've thought, that's it now. Then that's enough. and then you kind of get like a sign, you know, something will drop into your inbox, you know, an opportunity will kind of like present itself for you to maybe evolve your content a little and try something different. And it just kind of, you know, spurs you on to continue.
One of the things that I really love about Llama's stuff when I've been watching, and I don't watch an awful lot of content these days. I find that I need to detach myself from some of it just to keep myself sane a little bit in doing my own. But your series where you deep dive into specific countries and the leagues of a country, etc. How did that particular series come about? Is that something you were interested in before doing that? Were you kind of clued up in what other leagues were and other countries' football was, or is it something you found as you've researched them for that specific series?
A bit of both, really. It's not like I spend a lot of my free time watching sort of third division Brazilian games, and I've naturally brought that passion into Football Manager. But I've always been a fan of European football, of global football, really. I'm not a fan of a Premier League club, and for many years I've not had a team to support that are in the Premier League. I've always preferred lower league football and overseas football. It just, I don't know, I might offend supporters of Premier League clubs here. It just feels like it has more soul and it has more stories. You know, sometimes when I watch Premier League football, it's kind of like I've seen this film before. I know how it's going to end. I know Southampton will be 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, and I know that Chelsea will score twice in injury time, and you'll get your hopes up, but the big guy always wins in the end. I like stories. The reason why I like football, the reason why I like Football Managers, because I like storytelling, I think. And yeah, so that the series you're referring to, it was called the League Lowdown, and I've kind of made a little bit of a niche for myself, I guess, making videos about save ideas. And one of the things I really used to dislike about Football Managers, when you load up a game and then you're at the start screen and you want to play, but there's nothing that inspires you. You can't think of a club that would grip you. You can't think of a narrative or a storyline that you want to guide or be a part of. So I started making videos about, did you know the story of this club or this country or this league? And consider these teams, load them up, have a look. And they kind of gained a little bit of popularity. So I've continued making save idea videos to this day. In fact, I was working on one last night.
So off the back of that, is there one specific club, league, etc., that you've researched and then thought for yourself, actually, that's really interesting. I need to deep dive myself into that a bit and play there or whatever.
So that's the question, isn't it, Kev? And the trouble is with making this series, you feel like that every time you make a video, which makes it really, really hard. Because when you're not making Football Manager content, like you were saying earlier in your early days of Championship Manager, you can start again as frequently as you choose. But as a content creator, you kind of have to see it through. And you might play maybe 2, maybe 3 saves. If you're RDF Tactics, you play 3 or 4 a week.
I was just about to say.
you kind of play maybe 3 to 4 saves max during a game cycle. But every time you churn out one of these videos, you think, oh my God, I want to be in the Chilean 2nd division. And you think, but I'm only 2 seasons into my current save. So yeah, there are clubs and leagues that I desperately like to manage in. But before making content, I didn't actually have that much variety. I'd actually go through little periods. So when I first started playing Football Manager back in the early days, I'd take charge of Premier League clubs. And then as the versions continued and I got into my teenage years, I slipped down the leagues. So I was starting out at League 2 clubs. And then I went continental. So I went through a little Belgium phase. From Belgium, maybe spent about 3 or 4 FMs exclusively playing in the Belgian 3rd division. Then it was Norway next. And then I found out what was called the Dafuge Challenge, which, gentlemen, I imagine you're familiar with from the Sports Interactive forums.
Of course, but tell the viewers anyway.
This is actually a thing. This is not me inventing things. This is a known thing. If you go on the Sports Interactive, in fact, if you go onto a popular search engine, just type in FM23 Dafuge Challenge. It's something that they run on the forums every year, where you simulate the first season of Football Manager, and you take charge of one of the clubs that's kind of promoted by the AI to the bottom league of the nation that you're playing in. And so basically, before making Football Manager content, the last 8 years of my life, rather than focusing on family and career, has just been focused on simming through one season of Football Manager and taking charge of newly promoted sides. Is it something I'm proud of? Yes, it is.
And rightly so, because children can raise themselves. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that they're pretty self-sufficient. You've got GCSE bite size. That's all the education
This is why
they need.
Steve Jobs invented the the so that I don't have to parent.
Exactly. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you enormously. What a guy. That's it, isn't it? And I love the concept of those, because again, we've said on this podcast before, realistically speaking, there's no right or wrong way to play Football Manager. It is a completely subjective game. You can play it however you like. If you want to buy the game every year and load up PSG or Man City and play a 4-2-3-1 Gegenpress and win everything and enjoy it, more power to you. You go Glen Coco. You enjoy that. You live your best life. If you want to manage exclusively in, if you want to download, Estonian tier 9 databases and just manage there, then absolutely more power to you. You go and do that. I, like you, I enjoy the concept of a bit of narrative behind a stave. I like a story. I like to learn something. And for example, as Kev said earlier, streaming at the time of recording, streaming last night on Mad's database, I'm using Inter Milan because I just think the story of kind of that season for Inter Milan, there was a lot to like there. They're chasing domestic glory. It's coming to the end of arguably one of the most dominant, it's the best decade of Italian football arguably ever, because 90s Italian football is the best thing in the world. Watching your city rivals like AC Milan just being dominant, then Juve starting to creep in. 9 years without a league title. In reality, they finished 8th that season under Roy Hodgson. I mean, somebody needs to come in and rewrite that story. And why can't it be me? I want it so desperately to be me. And that's what's drawn me to that save, because with that database, you can pick any single club and you can spend 2 hours flicking through your squad list and going, I remember them and they're really, really good. This is fine. I don't even need to press spacebar. This is great. But I'm just drawn, I'm motivated to do something that Roy Hodgson couldn't. And, get into Milan, into a Champions League place in the first season. That's what I'm looking forward to. And also, I've got Ronaldo and I've got Roberto Baggio as well. So I'm really, really happy about both of those things too. But it's that narrative, it's that storytelling element that really kind of draws me in. And that's what I love. So I can understand completely why that's something that motivate you to, almost want to make content on it as well. Having been making those videos for a while, Llama, have you had people, do you get kind of feedback from people that are like, hey, I watched one of your videos and I've gone off and I've started a save in somewhere like Norway and I'm having a wonderful time. Do you get that kind of feedback from people? Because you should.
Yeah. So this is going to sound a little bit narcissistic, I think, but yeah, that's the most gratifying bit about it. So, I did a video recently and I dabbled with the clickbait. Okay, I called it "Best Save Ever."
Wow!
And lots of people clicked on it, but it's basically me suggesting teams that you could manage that might just be your best save ever. And we had a look at a club that was in the 4th tier of Portuguese football called Salgueiros, who used to be in the Premier League. In fact, they were in European football kind of like 20 years ago. But in this country, outside of, Porto, Benfica and Sporting, we don't perhaps know too many Portuguese clubs. We certainly don't know the ones that have fallen from grace. And I just kind of came across this story, and they've played one season of European football, but it was actually in a game against AS Cannes from France, where Zinedine Zidane was making his European football. And there's kind of like all these kind of like little things that kind of drew it together. I do a lot of research for these videos. So I was actually watching, there's a Portuguese ex-professional footballer that makes YouTube videos going into different football clubs and training with them. I couldn't understand a word of it because it was in Portuguese. I sent the video to a friend of mine who's Portuguese, and I was like, what are they talking about? And he said, why don't you just turn on the subtitles and just read about it? That's a good idea. So I was watching kind of Portuguese YouTube videos about this 4th tier Portuguese club, and loads of people are like, oh my God, I've been waiting weeks to decide my next save. I'm going to manage Sporting Club Salgueiros, Sport Comercio, Salgueiros. And it's the nicest feeling in the world. And just making those kind of videos is one of the it's kind of one of the moments you about, I mentioned half a dozen times you think, why am I making Football Manager content? What am I doing here? But it's actually those kind of style videos that led to Zealand just putting a tweet out saying, "Hey, FM Llama, follow me. I've got an idea for a video." I was like, getting ready for work. I was like, "What's this about?" And it led to me doing like a save ideas. And obviously, Zealand being Zealand, he's the master performer, isn't he? So whereas I potter around saying, "Oh, here's 3 clubs that you could manage," thinking that I'm big time, he decides that we're going to make a video together suggesting a save for every single league in Europe that you can manage it. It ended up being like a video that lasted about 4 days. But these little things just drop into your inbox occasionally. And it's just nice in content creation how one thing that you think, oh, maybe I've exhausted that, ends up leading to something else. It's really exciting. A little bit like opportunities like today,
Oh, bless you. It's completely true. Completely troo. We've waxed lyrical on pod before about the wider FM community, how welcoming it is, and just the opportunities that you get to meet people, to experience new things, to collaborate with people. They're constantly out there. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Like my time every week with Kevin, with Jeb is arguably one of my favorite bits of my week, because I enjoy that collaborative effort. I enjoy coming together and creating something, and we have a nice time doing it, don't we, Jebbaroo? We have a wonderful time doing it. We have a good time. Maybe we
definitely. It's really good to collaborate on that type of things. I think it was the first time I properly met you, Llama, was around this time last year when we did the 92-93 playoffs draft with Mad, and we had, like, those databases, I mean, that Mad creates are just unbelievable. And I think the 92-93 one, it was just a case with every single player that was getting picked out. Obviously, I'm 24, but I've done loads and loads of research about all these players and things like that. And we were just getting excited at all these random picks. I still remember how excited you got that Mel Sterling had been picked by somebody. It was just...
And why wouldn't he be?
Yeah, exactly. And it was things like that were just fantastic. I think... it was refreshing, and I think your work on the playoffs in particular. I mean, Kev's obviously sitting on the fence, but your commentary style is very unique, but also brilliant at the same time. You seem to have a little alliteration for every single player, or something along those lines. I don't know if they're all written down on the pad, or does that just flow freely for yourself?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably one of the blessings of the psyche that I have. It has blessings and curses, but I quite like, if I'm going to be on the FM playoffs, I want to tell a story. I want people to be at home watching this little competition, and I want to make it as vivid as possible to give them kind of insights and ideas. And it's like by trade, I'm a teacher, so you use language to kind of like coerce people's behavior on a daily basis. So I just kind of probably get it from my profession, really.
I mean, in terms of, if you kind of look at your, as we talked about at the start of the interview, you're a person who has done, in terms of Football Manager content creation, you've done lots. You've got quite a broad CV.
I think that's probably due to not being very good at any of them. You have to constantly try and reinvent yourself and move on to something else.
And there's no
hard disagree. I must say.
If I'd have made a success of any of the areas that I'd gone into, I'd have probably pursued them, wouldn't I?
Well, I very much like Jeb, very much like I think anybody who has watched you on the playoffs on any of the panels, it's a joy to listen to. It's a genuine pleasure to see you on a panel and listen to your commentary. In terms of the things that you've done, in terms of the content that you've made, in terms of all the different platforms and avenues you've used, where would you say sitting on a panel for a show like the playoffs ranks in there for you in terms of enjoyment?
So I think this is the thing about Football Manager content, is that this is not my job. I'm quite lucky that my content allows me to make a small side income, but it is not my job. And so none of it feels like work. I don't really agree to anything that I don't find joy in. So, making videos for my own channel is joyous. And I've recently started streaming and found it equally just joyous to have people typing in messages and, you're chatting away with them. It is the most phenomenal thing. And FM playoffs is probably that on steroids, I would say. It's just, you've got all of these people all kind of like stressed and nervous in this draft competition, and you're just sat in the kind of like the truck out back with a martini and a cigar, just passing judgment on their draft picks, as if, by the way, I have any credentials for critiquing anybody else, either tactically or in terms of drafting wise. I've only ever entered one draft competition myself, and I entered it and in the first round was drawn against one of the members of the FMT team, and it was a two-legged affair that I lost 11-2. And I just decided, oh, we're all here to have fun, aren't we? So I drafted an entire squad of players who were all called Al. And sometimes when I tell that story, I have to just make clear, I didn't draft an entire squad of owls, not like Tawny, Barn and Snowy, but of owls. And it was a terrible idea. And I worked out very, very swiftly that you don't mess around in draft competitions. It's a very serious thing. Otherwise, you get your backside handed to you on a velvet cushion. So I very much prefer just passing judgment on others instead. And then you can just have fun, We're all doing this for, apart from maybe 7 or 8 guys at the very, very top, we're all doing this just for the social interactions and for the giggles, for the joy. And I think one of the things lockdown made so many people realize globally was that life just has to contain more joy. So much of what I realized I was doing as I turned 40 was I was doing stuff out of duty. I was, paying bills and mortgages and doing things that weren't bringing me genuine joy and excitement and interaction. And, we're on this planet for a very brief time. So I think you owe it to yourself to just do joyous things. And, some of the things I've got to do through Football Manager content creation have been truly that.
Can I just say, I was on the opposite end of that 11-2. And it was, I've said this before over the last 3 years, because it was about 3 years ago that we did that and you drafted your team of owls. And at that point, I knew that you were unique and interesting and different in this
strange
space.
I think is the word, Kev, isn't it?
And that too, and it was great. But in all seriousness, and I have said this before, the half hour I spent on a voice call with you, yes, winning that particular tie was joyous for me, and it genuinely was. It was a great opportunity to spend some time with a guy that has a unique perspective on stuff, has a lot of fun to bring, and the fact that you did the team of owls in the first place was just absolutely phenomenal at that moment. And it was way back in the second season of the Creators Championship, wasn't it? Yeah, just brilliant. So you bought the joy, my friend. You really, really did, because I experienced it.
I think, Kev, we have a duty to, don't we? If we're going to try and invade people's TV screens or computer screens, we have to make it joyous. Yeah, and this was my philosophy as a teacher. I used to teach 16 to 18-year-olds, and we're locking teenagers. It's bordering on kidnapping education, to be honest. And I think you have a duty to bring the joy. One of the things you have to do as you're training to be a teacher is you have to do what's called shadowing a student for a day, where you have to go to all of their lessons. And I realized during teacher training, school is the most miserable, boring environment in the world. If you don't make every effort to just fill it with joy, with excitement, just with kindness. And I think we have a duty to do that in whatever sphere we work or we do recreationally. I don't really understand why anybody would want to make Football Manager content and be angry or be controversial or condescending. Do it for joy. It's all got to be for joy.
Absolutely, because there's so much fun to be had with the game. And in terms of a broader community, if you look at a lot of communities based around different games, it's just the FM community in and of itself is just a wonderful thing to be part of. I think Llama, we got to meet when we did the FMT live show in Nottingham, and we got to meet I've got to meet so many other people from the community who I've seen on screens or I've interacted with via their streams, however it may be. And just, it's getting to get together with people, like-minded people who, as you say, spreading joy, because there's fun to be had with these games. And I think if you're not having fun with it, then not that you're doing it wrong, but then maybe just change your approach to what it is that you're doing, because there's joy to be found, floor to ceiling. Actually, this is an something I wanted to ask you, because as somebody who works in education, I work in a school. I'm not a teacher, but I work in a school. Have you had instances? Do the kids know that you make YouTube content? Has that ever kind of come up? Is that a conversation you've ever had to have with people?
Yeah. So I was making educational YouTube channel,
Sure.
YouTube content beforehand, and so the kids all knew about that. The Football Manager side, I managed to keep under wraps for a long time, for a good couple of years. But then the video with Zealand happened, and that kind of blew that out of the water. So I was very much of the kind of ignore any questions about it mentality. And unfortunately, I actually left teaching at the end of the last academic year, and now I'm sort of doing other things in education instead. So I'm not in a school environment day to day, because I think the more familiar people become with you, the more awkward and the more vulnerable you are. But teaching does seem to be, or education in general, does seem to be the profession that has the most number of Football Manager creators, I think. And maybe that makes sense. You know, you're on your feet talking to people all day, so it's a fairly swift transition into turning a camera on and just, you know, speaking your mind as well.
I was really hoping that it was you finished an education video and you went, and that's how quadratic equations work, and that's how to simplify them that way. Tune into my other channel where you can find out the best teams to manage in Lithuania.
No, it's a really awkward crossover, actually, because you know, I've even had people in stream saying, why haven't you uploaded a video about A-level economics in a while? I'm like, a bit busy managing Kingstonian at the moment. Come on, you really think your A-levels are more important? We got a chance of the playoffs here.
Yeah, it's very easily done. When I started my new role in the school that I currently work in, my second day there, a student came into our office, and I think at the time it freaked me out, because they sat and they were staring at me, and I asked if I could help them, and they went, "So have you ever been on the telly?" I was like, "No, I've not been on the telly." It's like, "Are you in a band?" I'm like, "No, I'm not in a band." They're like, "Are you a streamer?" And I was like, "No," because I'm not expecting, and then in hindsight, I'm not expecting that child to have any kind of vague interest in Football Manager. It's pretty much the opposite end of the demographic you would expect. And in hindsight, I think they were probably just asking questions for the sake of asking questions, because they were bored. But just as soon as they said that, I was like, "Oh no." Because what if they know? And what have I said? What have I done? I like this job. I'd like to keep it, but you know, it's something that I do say I've never brought up. I don't plan on it. And even if the kids did know, they wouldn't be interested. It's just spreadsheets, isn't it? They get enough of that in school. They're not interested at all. So, Llama, in terms of your content creation journey, as well as your say videos and all the other wonderful things that you do, you have recently become part of something slightly bigger. A collective of content creators, the Manager's Seat. How are we enjoying collaborative content creation efforts?
Well, so that for me is FM at its most collaborative, because, you know, day to day, you know, there's a whole group of us just, you know, bouncing ideas around off each other, helping each other, and you know, very few of us that go into content creation actually know anything. You know, Jeb's a bit different. Jeb's day job means that he understands the pressing of buttons and things. But people like, you know, JD, Stinger, and I really are technophobes. And it's great just to have that support network that you can run ideas past, help solve problems, and you know, come up with ideas for great videos together, and then go away and make them. So it's FM at its most collaborative. It's just joyous. It's just joyous to be working with two of your pals, you know, putting out Football Manager content.
So was that something that you were looking for, or just sort of came your way, as it were, the opportunity to do something collectively?
It's kind of all evolutionary, isn't it, Kev? Like, I mean, so you're solely a streamer now, Kev, but it's probably true to say you wouldn't have become a streamer if you hadn't have been a YouTube channel first, and just one thing kind of segued into another. And I guess if we all hadn't been running our own individual YouTube channels, we wouldn't have kind of met in Discord groups and things and got on and decided to kind of pool our efforts and make our own channel together. It just kind of evolves. It's all quite organic, and I think that's how a lot of the best Football Manager content and, you know, best kind of initiatives in general in society are. They're just kind of like organic. They just spark from an idea one person has, and somebody says, "Oh no, that's good, but what about this?" And it just grows.
And it's that organic growth into something lovely that I don't think a lot of people who haven't kind of been on this end of it have got to experience it. You know, I've had the exact same thing with this podcast, for example. You know, being friends with Matt led me to kind of then meeting and start to interact more with Tony, and then being there for the early days of the FMT and the early days of Tony's streams, and then getting to know him as a person, and then just organically just kind of finding my way here. And then with Tony's very, very sudden departure under the best circumstances possible, it's important to emphasize. Just Tony
Sounds like the lawyers are speaking there,
doesn't it? Yeah, I'm contractually obliged to say Tony has not broken the law. There we go. Everything is fine. Lawyers. Allegedly, Tony has not broken the law. But then getting to reach out to Jeb and to Kev and bring them into the process, and then, you know, also getting to deal with Alice when we had Alice as part of the podcast. It felt like nothing about it felt forced. Nothing about it felt contrived. It was friends getting to hang out with friends, and then as a result of that, then getting to create something bigger, more than the sum of our individual parts. And that again is such a wonderful feeling. We've talked about it on the podcast before about how wonderfully collaborative the FM community is. And if there's one thing that I would hope people would take from conversations like this, if you're streaming, if you're creating any kind of content, if there's somebody that you watch, or there's somebody that you know, somebody you've watched their videos, you've watched their streams, you've interacted with them in some capacity, thinking it might be fun to make something with you, just get in touch. Tweet them, just get on Discord, get in touch with those people, because it's going to be very rare that those people are going to turn around and say, I'm a creative person in this FM space, but I don't really know if I want to create with you, because everybody loves collaborating. It's such a wonderful experience. Is there anything that, I mean, the manager seat is still kind of, I mean, how many months has it been going for now? It's still kind of in its infancy, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I probably should know. I think it's about 6 or 7 months that we've been doing it.
Yeah.
It's really good because it allows us to make content that we wouldn't necessarily release on our own channel. So it's just allows you to do like a different style of Football Manager content. And again, we have a really vibrant Discord through that as well. That's got nearly 4,000 members in it now, I think. So it's just great. You just meet people from all around the world.
Which in and of itself is just a great thing. It's everybody loves Football Manager. This is the thing. We've talked about this before in terms of things like the FMT live show, for example. You've got 80, 90 odd people all together in the same space, regardless of what kind of level of interaction you may have had with each other individually before. You all have this common ground, and it's this beautiful spreadsheet simulator that we all sink far too much of our lives into. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I mean, Jeb, in terms of the kind of the collaborative side of things, obviously you have worked your magic behind the scenes with things like the playoffs. In terms of the people that you've gotten to work with, I mean, it's probably going to be echoing sentiments, isn't it? But that level of interaction on a regular basis with a wider scale of people, how have you found that in terms of collaboration work?
Absolutely hated it. Just every day I speak to these horrible, horrible people like Kev up here. I mean, some of the words that he comes out with is just unbelievable. No, honestly, I've got a new circle of friends, and I think that's the nicest way, the best way to put it. A new circle of friends on there. I often laugh with my missus. She goes, "Oh, you're going upstairs. Which circle of friends are you going to talk to today?" Because there's people I used to game with, there's people I used to work with, there's an expanded group that we used to do stuff through there, and then this FM community is even like the playoff side of things. I've got about 5 or 6 Discord groups that are just regular all the time, and everyone's chatting. It might just be stuff about the upcoming playoffs, but a lot of the time it's just nonsense. A lot of it, some of it, it's sending silly memes to each other. It's just general chatting. Particularly after this playoffs, I didn't have a particularly good week in terms of mental health and that side of things. There was a bit of imposter syndrome. But one of the nicest things, after Thursday, I had about 10 messages in my inbox over from people who said, "You smashed that, that was amazing," all things like that. Granted, I put a tweet out. I tried to do a singing intro. I messed that up. Sorry, Bert Bacharach, rest in peace. And then I even tried to plug this podcast at the end, and I messed that up. But like everything in between went nice and smoothly. There's a few issues, but it's having all those people, particularly when you're on a live broadcast as well, it's having those people that have got your back as well. And like they're not going to let you just like, right, there you you go, he's going wrong, I'm just going to leave him to it. They'll step in, there's that type of thing. And Kev in particular, I've missed him on these playoffs, but we've had people like Sai, Callum, H2, all been absolutely wonderful. Same with Llama as well. I mean, sometimes I'm usually in the back office when Llama's on stream, because Tony has Llama as his sidekick on that side of things as well, or he's in there that way. He's been in the pub a couple of times with me on the drafts and crafts, but yeah, honestly, the interaction I've had with Llama, obviously yourself, Rich, I'd love to have you back on sometime soon as well. But it's a fantastic community, and it just seems wider, like the chats and stuff like that. It just spreads more and more, and it's great. You can jump into so many people's streams now, and you'll know somebody in the chat immediately. And you're like, and it's how warm it is. I think why Callum's streaming right now, and there's about 5 people in his stream that I know that we can all chat to and all things like that. And it's seeing that development. I mean, Callum's doing a year today, and he's just hit 1,000 followers. And he's going, oh, next year I'll have 2,000 followers. You won't. You'll have 5,000 followers. That's the way it will grow. It does it once it grows. Once it hits that level, it just explodes, and it's fantastic to see.
There's something really interesting that Jeb mentioned there, and I can relate to. I wondered if Llama can in any way. Is that this thought of imposter syndrome? So for Jeb, he had a tough week at work and other things, and it impacted some of the streams and other bits that he did, and that's just something that happens for us occasionally, and it affected him. For me, I know of myself, when I'm in my own little bubble of creating my own little thing, I'm actually relatively comfortable, because whatever I put out is me. I chose to do it. It's the way it is, and that's what it is. When somebody like the playoffs comes to me and says, would you like to be a panelist on our playoffs? Or Rich comes to me and says, Tony's leaving the podcast, would you like to come and become a member of the co-hosting team of the podcast? My immediate response is imposter syndrome. Why would people want to hear from me? Why would I be able to? Can I do that? Are they going to regret that 2 seconds after hiring me to do something like that, etc.? And that's how my mind worked in those kind of contexts. What sort of personality type do you have, Llama? Do you find an opportunity and just go, yeah, why not? Or is there anything in your head that goes, should I, shouldn't I? Is it right? Is it wrong? What's the thought?
I feel like we've kind of plunged very seriously into the therapy part now, haven't we? It was all lovely seamless for the first 30 minutes. It was all giggles and tickles. And then Kev just kind of like spins around in his chair and says, right, we're going to break you down emotionally now and build you back up again and see what
just give me a second. I've just got to get my clipboard.
So my personality, Kev, is absolutely nothing like anybody ever thinks it is. I'm actually very, very quiet. And again, I don't know whether that might be a teaching thing. When you spend your days talking in your personal life, you tend not to want to talk. You want to think. So I'm not hugely communicative. I'm very quiet. I'm very, very comfortable talking in front of large groups. I'm very, very awkward in sort of one-on-one situations. And my natural personality is actually just to try and shrink into the background, which I know other people that create content have mentioned before. Everybody thinks that you must be this raving extrovert, but that's not really the case. And I have huge imposter syndrome, and I think it comes from my natural disposition is to doubt that I have the ability to do anything. My next character trait, which is very unbecoming, is that when people tell me I have the potential to do something, I assume that they're lying for some kind of ulterior motive. And anybody that tries to give me words of comfort, I automatically think, what's your angle here? Why are you trying to dress things up? So every opportunity that I've ever had, I mean, do you have time for a short story?
Absolutely.
So I was pottering along as a Football Manager content creator, and then Zealand puts a tweet out saying, hey, Llama, contact me. I've got an idea for a video. And we were chatting via DMs, and then we had a Discord kind of call together, and we're talking about this idea. We were laughing and we were joking. We were holding hands, walking through a flowery meadow, and it was all beautiful. And then he said, okay, so I'm thinking we're going to record at this date, at this time. I'll send you the link. Beautiful. I'm there. And 5 minutes before the start, I actually plucked up the courage to say to Zealand, am I in this video with you? Because I'd assumed all the time he was just bringing me on board as a researcher. You know, I'd found out all these great save ideas, kind of told him about the histories of these clubs. And I thought he was going to do this thing. And it was really awkward for a while. And I was thinking, I don't know whether I'm in this video or just kind of his researcher as part of it. And 5 minutes before we went live, am I in this? He's like, yeah, is your camera set up? Are you ready to go? And it's like, God, I'm about to make a video with Zealand here. And you just assume that you're not worthy of being on that stage. And do you know, I'd love you to get him on. Ask Zealand, when he goes into these big events, and does he have imposter syndrome too? I don't know whether that's just part of being a humble person, which Zealand is. He probably does.
Oh, we'd love to have Z on. We'd absolutely love to have.
Well,
that.
sorry, I'll put that out there. No pressure. It's a bit of a step up from me.
Yeah,
first guest on the Revamp Pod, straight to Zealand. By the way, Jeb, there's for those that are watching on YouTube, there's glory over your shoulder right now.
I keep catching glimpses of it. Before he was just showing off a digestive, like full screen digestive, and now he's got the squid head on as well.
And I guess, sorry, Rich, to go back to your earlier question, this is what makes Football Manager content creation so great to me, is that for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see over Jeb's shoulder. For those of you who are listening through whatever Spotify platform is your preference, he has Pokes FM stream playing over his shoulder. And just by chance, I met Pokes about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. I was in somebody's stream and they raided to Pokes. And I was having a bit of a tough time because it was during the early stages of the COVID pandemic. And I was having to isolate away from the rest of my family. And I had a bit of the It's Not Fairs. And they raided into Pokes' stream. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is A, the most entertaining, but B, the warmest, most wholesome chat and group of people I've been involved with in weeks. And Pokes is actually a mate of mine now. And it's just fabulous that taking a chance on something and making some Football Manager content allows you to make friendships, which now we are getting deep, Kev. You're breaking me down a bit here.
I get to everyone eventually, mate.
As a middle-aged male, I guess I could take the male out of that. I could take the middle-aged bit out of it. Just as an adult, it's really difficult to make new friends. It's quite easy when you move jobs and you can meet new colleagues, but it's our parents don't arrange play dates for us anymore. It's really difficult to make new friends. And so Football Manager, I think whether you're a content creator or not, if you're involved in any kind of capacity, whether it's producing content or viewing it and consuming it, particularly on a live basis through streaming, it is a conduit, a mechanism for just making friends, which is so important for joy and mental health. It's the most fabulous thing in the world.
Absolutely it is. Like the friendships that I've made through this game.
No, not
how dare you? Quick, somebody tell a joke about bums, please. It's true. It's true. Like the friendships that I've made through Football Manager, like as you say, as an adult, it is tricky to make new friends because it
is when you're this dislikable.
Oh my god! Honestly, we're suffering through this interview, Llama. It's terrible. Like I said, I've just started a new job, and on my first day, my wife was joking with me. She's like, "Oh, are you gonna? How long is it before you're gonna, let them see the real you?" And I'm like, "God, never. They're never going to know. Never, under no circumstances, are they to know what goes on here. This is just for me." But it is tricky. But through this community, I've made wonderful friends. I've got Jeb and I've got Kev in my life on a regular basis now. Like Matt and Tony, I speak to practically every day. Sounds like a
doorbell.
It's quite all right. Somebody's knocking on the door. Just they want to see Kev. I lost my dad a couple of years ago. I was on a Discord call with Jebbaroo when I got the phone call. Matt and Tony were two of the first people to reach out to me after that happened. And at that point, I'd never physically met Tony. And he was like, "Do you want me to? Like, if you need me there, I'll come down and see you." It's such a beautiful thing. And these are the friendships that can evolve. As you say, Llama, from just being in isolation, raiding into somebody's Twitch stream and go, "This person is a joy to be around. I would like more of that person in my life, please and thank you." I feel the exact same way whenever I'm lucky enough to finish work early, have to catch the tail end of Kev's streams. It's just such a warm and welcoming environment. And again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I don't think there are many communities that are this welcoming to the level that we're all at now. You know, seeing everybody together in Nottingham was a joy. Seeing, you know, 80, 90 people all together, all interacting, people that, as we said earlier, have maybe watched each other's streams or spoken on Discords, to people that speak every day because they know each other in real life. To see them all together and interact with each other is a truly, truly wonderful thing. And I think in terms of, I can't think of a single person that we've spoken to through previous podcast guests, through Discords, through just conversations, anybody whose life has been made significantly worse by being part of the FM community, because there's always some kind of positive to it, which I think is a really, really wonderful thing. I guess that leads us towards kind of the tail end of interview, Llama. I guess the question we can ask now is kind of what's next? Where do we go from here? What's next in terms of FM Llama's content, in terms of the manager seat? What happens moving forwards for you?
Genuinely, I don't know. I don't really plan it out to that extent, really. All I'm going to do is just carry on doing things that seem pretty fun. So, I mean, we'll kind of like let the listener understand a little bit behind your podcast here. I was a relatively late invitee, I think, onto this. Rich just dropped into my DMs earlier in the week and said, "Do you fancy this?" And I just paused for a second and thought, "Does that sound fun?" Yes, yeah, it does. So I just jumped in, and a few days later, we're recording it together. And I mean, I hope that's the future for my content. Really, I hope people will approach me, so I don't need to think of any of my own creative ideas. And they say, "Would you like to get involved in this?" And I'll think, "Does that sound joyous?" And if it does, I'll be there.
I love that. I think that's an incredibly sensible way of looking at things, isn't it? You know, I mean, Kev, obviously, you know, Kev, after first appearing on this podcast, it's one of my favorite things in the world, Kev, is your, you know, its project and its purpose, and it's that kind of thing. And it's, to me, I don't know if you feel the same way, Kev, but that kind of approach to things is not massively dissimilar to the way that you're looking at things from a project and purpose point of view.
Yes, absolutely. You have a filter, don't you? And some people's filter in this kind of world that we live in within the FM community and the Twitch and the YouTubing side of things, their filter is, how can I make the most money and support my family? And that's a perfectly great filter to have. For other of us, it's not. And, you know, there are other filters. And is it fun? Is it impactful? Is it something I think I can do? For me, you're right. Project and purpose. This whole thing is my project, and it gives me purpose in a way that I can't find in many other places, and it's vitally important to me. So it's exactly that, but it's the filter that you choose to look through, isn't it? Basically,
that honestly, Kev, that's exactly why I'm making content. I always talk to people about the three currencies in our society. So people think there's only one currency, and that is pound sterling. But my other two currencies are time and joy. And so many of us make decisions that only kind of think about one currency, which is pound sterlings. But if you start thinking about joy and time as equally important currencies, it's amazing just the things you find you end up doing and just how happy they make you.
Absolutely. Now, on the subject of joy, Llama, because that's a beautiful segue, because before we start to move towards the tail end of podcast, because we did set Llama a brief bit of homework before we started recording. We set Llama a little challenge, but before we get into that aspect of it, on the subject of joy, Llama, it would be remiss of us to have been sat here chatting to you for the afternoon without me broaching arguably one of the most joyful things on the planet with you. Chris Bart-Williams, Llama. Talk to me about Chris Bart-Williams, because it's wonderful to find out there is a fellow enthusiast on the platform. Where does
do you know what I like about Chris Bart-Williams? And anybody that is unfamiliar with me as I've entered this podcast arena is going to be thinking, why has he just been talking about joy and now he's talking about Chris Bart-Williams? I was about to say I love 90s football, and I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. I think I'm a little trapped in the 90s for all of my kind of social references, really. Musically, TV-wise, film-wise, everything was better in the 90s, and football's no different for me. And I just love it when people say the name of a 90s footballer that you've not thought of for ages, and it just gives you a little chuckle, you know? You just say Phil Babb, John Harkes, Lee Chapman, Rod Wallace, and suddenly everyone goes, "Oh God, I've not thought about them for ages." And And Chris Bart-Williams is just one of those people you just kind of like, tell me a footballer I've not thought about in a long time. Chris Bart-Williams, everyone, oh, the Bart man doing his little celebration. It's just a beautiful, beautiful time to have been watching football.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday supporter, so I can just about remember the glory days of Chris Bart-Williams, and I can't remember who it was that told me, but somebody mentioned, when they mentioned Llama's name, said, he also enjoys Chris Bart-Williams. I was like, this is the best day of my life.
I'm only
Another
human,
one.
Rich.
Exactly. You are only a human being. You can't dislike him. What a player. What a man. No, exactly. It's that beautiful nostalgia. I mean, that was the basis of my stream last night, was just sat there just with my chat going, oh, have a look at Zinedine Zidane for me. It's like, yes, let's look up Zinedine Zidane. It's like, yeah, now look up John Hartness. Yep, let's look up John Hartness. Let's just work our way through pretty much every squad in this database. And every time we see somebody, you just get the feeling that everybody sat at home watching is kind of going, yeah, that's nice. That rings. Yeah, that's it's that warm wave of nostalgia that floods over you. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Right. I think it's probably time we move on to the final section of this week's podcast, because it's the first time with a guest. It's the first time we've welcomed a guest to the podcast since the relaunch, shall we say. We thought it would be a really, really good idea. Well, I say we thought, Jeb had this wonderful idea, because we're having guests on. We've sat here and we've asked Llama loads of questions, and it's been really, really fun doing so. We thought, wouldn't it be nice if we got our guest to, in turn, ask us some questions? So we offered it to Llama, who instantly just started coming up with questions, because we couldn't have picked a better person to start this off with. Llama, is there anything you would like to ask us?
Okay, I'm just going to jump straight into it. Rich, I'm going to leave you to last, if that's okay. We'll go with host last, and we'll go with co-host first. Jeb, you are, of course, the greatest button presser in the FM community. And for people that don't really get to look behind the curtain, most of the things that you're involved with only actually happen because you're involved with them. And I guess you get a leg up on that from your day job, where you're involved in kind of like, media production. But in your opinion, with the evolution of Football Manager content from YouTube onto Twitch, and now more and more onto TikTok, and from Let's Plays to streaming draft tournaments, where is Football Manager content going next? And I'm asking that with the ulterior motive of maybe getting out in front of everybody here, and whatever you say, I'm going to go off and do.
Stitch him up, Jeb. Stitch him up. No,
if it's hot tub FMing, I'm out, Jeb. I will say, and I think most people would be.
Yeah, it won't work unless you've got a really significant table across the hot tub that can avoid the splashes on the laptops and all the equipment that's going on there. I genuinely think, and I've seen it happen with other games as well. So you've got last year there was a thing called Sea of Thieves Fest. It was at a small, I think it was like not a church. I guess it's like a. Yeah, I'm going to say it's a church, but it's basically a church. They'd taken over the church hall for a weekend. 400 people turned up. They had devs there and stuff like that. They had a whole little festival. It was just for the day, and they had a little after party and stuff like that. I think a live event really would benefit. I think the FMT live that we did in Nottingham, it was on a Monday. It was in November. It was early November, so it was nowhere near payday. Christmas was coming up and all stuff like that. We had 90 people turn up to Nottingham, and they didn't just come from around the area of Nottingham. They came from Scotland. They came from I came from the Isle of Man on
Denmark.
That day. We had people from Northern Ireland. Yeah, and then we had Mad and his crazy friend come over from Denmark. So yeah, but yeah, it's that type of way. And I think genuinely we could build to something like a big meet, even if it's just to start off a big meetup. I honestly think we could bring in. You could do podcast records. You could do a live streamer. Playoffs or showdown or something as big as that. I honestly think something along those lines would be really good, even if it's just a meetup, so you can meet all these people that have been in your chat and realise how tall they really are, because that was one thing that I did notice from FMT Live. Everyone's obnoxiously tall. Yeah. Like, I'm 6'1", but even so, a lot of them are just like, wow, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Let's just spare a thought for us down here at 5'9", Jeff.
Yeah, and I think that was the other thing, is when you realise all these people have legs as well. I mean, it's just like it's that type of way.
Right, Kev, you're not getting away with it either. I got a question for you. Now, Kev, look, you're not the self-proclaimed. I think the rest of the community proclaims you as the nicest person in Football Manager, and it's a badge that you wear well. But come on, deep down, all the way in there, in the soul, there's got to be something that gets your FM goat. Either something about the game or something about the community and how it operates. There must, on your darker days, be moments when you turn to some of the bad language you've learned down the years. Drat, bother, dag nabbit. What is it that gets your FM goat, Kev?
Okay. So there are two things, Llama. Two.
Not that you've pre-thought about this at all. Goodness.
No, well, immediately they're there bottling, they're bottled up. They're right just on the edge, that there is one. The first thing that I'll tell you is that one of the most frustrating things to me is how nice second yellow card is, because he's on my territory. And, we're going to have a nice off, me and him, at some point. It's not good. It's going to be a messy situation, but he is just too nice. That's a bit of a problem to me, really. So we're going to have words, me and Matt, at some point. So that's the first thing. If you want to know what genuinely gets my goat in FM, and there's a lot of conversation at the moment around the community about the state of the game and how good it is or it isn't, and what the good and the bad parts of it. The only thing that genuinely really gets my goat when I'm playing Football Manager is that my defenders are stupid. that is literally, and it really does get me. It really, really does. I find it so frustrating that my defender runs in the opposite direction because he thinks the other defender is going to defend the situation or whatever it might be, and it just leaves the space, and then the striker goes in and scores. And it's usually when I'm on the verge of doing something really, really great, and then it goes and ruins it for me completely, and I have to put on a lovely smiley happy face on my stream and make out that everything's lovely in the world and I'm the nicest man in the world. And deep down, Llama, I am absolutely seething.
Oh, and I'm glad we took you to that place. Let's be honest. I feel like next time you stream, I want to see you in a Fonzie-esque leather jacket with the collar turned up now. And for our good host, Richard, something a little bit more whimsy for you. As a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and as a fan of 90s football and past versions of Football Manager. So I don't want any kind of modern answers like this, like, Makoko answers. If you could take a Football Manager wonder kid from a bygone era and transplant them into the real life Sheffield Wednesday team this season, you've only got one pick, Rich. Who is going to Hillsborough?
Anybody but Chris Bart-Williams. I couldn't do that to him. I just couldn't do it to him. No, it would be Chris Bart-Williams. He came up earlier because, of course,
if you knew anybody here, you can have Mark Kerr, you can have Zhao Paver, you can have Zola Makoko.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you meant just from a Sheffield Wednesday bygone era.
Crikey. Why?
The wider the net. To Madeira. There you go. He doesn't exist, so it doesn't matter. He's in. He's absolutely in, even if his attributes are a tenth as good as what they were in the game. No, it's Mark Kerr. It's got to be Mark Kerr. He's the best of us, the absolute best of us. Mark Kerr was the reason that I downloaded Championship Manager 102 on my family laptop, which I keep stealing at every opportunity. It's Mark Kerr, isn't it? It's Mark Kerr. A fun fact that people might not know, a very, very exciting look behind the curtain. When Matt first texted me to tell him that he and Tony were going to be doing this podcast, the working title for Football Manager Therapy was Mark Curb Your Enthusiasm. So, which I think they ended up using as an episode title back in the day. But it's all about Mark Kerr, isn't it? Arguably the greatest wonderkid central midfielder Football Manager has ever produced. Like, I reckon if Barry Bannon picked up an injury, I reckon Mark Kerr would probably do a good job coming in and covering him until he recovered in real life. So yeah, Mark Kerr's got to be the one. Love that, Llama. Love that.
One note on the database, actually. I need to check with Mad on this, but I tried to look for Mark Kerr on the 98-99 database, and he's an assistant manager, so he's not evolved down. So it might be have to evolve loading the Scottish leagues up. So yeah, I was a little. Granted, he might be able to find that way, and I think that's Mark Kerr's a really good choice, though.
Thank you. There you go. Thank you for acknowledging my completely subjective pick, but thank you for telling me I also got it right. So that's always good to know. Always very, very good to know. Llama, thank you so much. 3 excellent questions. I appreciate you enormously. That, I think, guys, don't know how you feel, but I reckon that's a podcast. How do we all feel?
So.
Yeah, that feels good. Feels good to me. So what we do, Llama, if you're not familiar with the concept, before we end each episode, we like to go around and just plug ourselves. Llama, you are a man who does many wonderful things that deserve all the plugs in the world. Tell us where we can find all that wonderful content that you make.
You find me on YouTube where I make, let's be honest, bang average content. So let me use my plug differently. This week, a star was born in FM drafting called Pokes FM. He has a Twitch channel. Go and find it, drop it a follow. The next time he's live, treat yourself and go and watch on Pokes FM, and I'll probably see you in the chat.
Wonderful. Out of spite, Llama, we're going to link all of your stuff in the episode descriptions for this as well. But yeah, you're not going away that easily. Stop being so nice. Kev's here. He's got a reputation to uphold. Jeb, if they would like to watch you doing the content, where can they do so?
I think I need to go in and apologise because I might have offended his actual son when he was talking about the son that he never had in Oscar Arca this week. But we'll see where we go. Yeah, you can find me over at Jebaroo on Twitch and the Jebaroo on Twitter. I should be streaming some Pescara content sometime this week, I'm going to guess. Kev, I'll hand to you.
Thank you. You can find me at the United City FM, both on Twitter and Twitch. I'm on Twitch every weekday afternoon, 3 till 5 p.m. UK time. Come and find us, currently in Romania. But as Llama said, as we've said a couple of times in this particular episode, a star was born. Go and check Pokes out. I was in his chat the day after his playoffs appearance. And the fact that he didn't succeed, for want of a better term, in getting through in the playoffs does not mean he was not a winner. He really, really was. Go check him out. And I'll be back here hopefully next week for more of podcast.
I hope you're back next week, Kev. I really hope you're back. As for me, just to echo everybody's sentiments, Pokes. Go and follow Pokes. Pokes is really, 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 really good fun. Please go and do that. As you say, success isn't necessarily derived from qualification from these tournaments. And that's my line, and I'm sticking to it until I qualify for one, and then that's all it's based on, and everyone else can be quiet. Thank you very, very much. If you want to come find me doing content, please feel free to do so. twitch.tv/RichOwensFM. I am streaming the Mad Scientist 1.98.99 database. We are into Milan, and we've signed Gary Speed. If that's not made you want to come and watch a stream, I don't know what will. I'm trying my best. Twitter at Rich Owens FM as well. Come hang out there. We have a good time. It's been a wonderful way to come back. What a wonderful way to come back after a week away. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, as always, the FM team. Llama, it's been a genuine pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. And I've had a nice time as well. So from all of us, thank you for listening to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Love you lots. Bye-bye.